All right. I think most of the people are seated again. Just want to add in that we have added some lightning talks after lunch. So there will be a bit more talks. And right now we'll have a bit longer talk with Niel, again on stage, about a lovely product that I also use called LibreNMS. So give a hand to Niel.
Yeah, sorry, you've got me for a little while again, folks. I'm not too sure, actually, if the pre-lunch slot is the worst one to do, as everybody's getting hungry. So I'll obviously try and make sure I don't overrun and even shorten it down if I need to. But before I start, I actually just want to say a big thank you to everybody who's involved in DKNOG. Obviously, I'm a bit of an outsider, as you can tell by my accent. So not just having come from the UK for this, but actually I'm not involved in the network community over this side of the Europe. So, you know, obviously a little bit nervous sometimes when you come to these events, but I have to say, you know, everybody in this room yesterday at the social was very welcoming. You know, it's a bit of a breath of fresh air sometimes from being in the UK. And, you know, I have to say thank you very much for that. So you've put me at ease a little bit for doing these talks today, which is good. So I'm just going to obviously give a talk about LibreNMS. It's a project that I'm one of the maintainers for. So spent quite a bit of time involved in this project. It's since around the end of 2013. So I know this a little bit more in and out than Oxidize itself. So hopefully I can talk about it with a bit more confidence. I just want to talk about a bit of the history of it first, though. Tell you obviously where it started, etc. And just give you a kind of a background to what it is. So I don't know if there's any Harry Potter fans in the audience. When I did this talk in NLNOG last year, I have updated. I'm not repeating the same things all the time here. I did say where the fork was from. However, it's now at that point where it is the software that we don't talk about. Anybody who might have used it before probably knows why. But yeah, we forked from something else in October 2013. I joined the project around December 2013 when we found it for work. We wanted to replace the other piece of software and got, you know, started contributing code there. The one downside to the fork at the time, though, however, was it had to go back to the last known GPL version because obviously the other software changed its license. It was no longer open source. So the chap who originally did the fork had to go back in time. So at the time of the fork, we lost around 18 months of bug fixes, you know, updates. The web UI lost a lot of sort of its nice-looking features, etc. So it meant, you know, you kind of had to start from scratch again with it. So the initial fork was done by a chap called Paul and Tyler. They're not around on the project much anymore. Paul hangs around on the ISE channel still, but he's kind of stepped away, goes off talking about NTP and things like that for some strange reason. But you know, he's still there. You know, still obviously you know, loves the fact that the project's carried on and has kind of grown to what it is today. Obviously, I also want to say a big thank you to everybody who has contributed back to LibreNMS. I mean, anybody who's worked on open source projects before know it can be tiring work. You know, you get people turning up every single day asking for help, asking for things that need to be updated, improved, bug fixed, etc. But I just want to take a moment to say thank you to anybody who has actually contributed back, whether it's code, documentation, user support, etc. You know, it makes a big difference in a project. So thank you, and obviously please carry on, especially clicking that edit button in GitHub. It makes a big difference. You know, Rosiak, known him for quite a while now. We met in London actually to do a bit of a code day on LibreNMS. He's still around, still jumps in and helps out every so often. Can't let go of the project. But we've actually got another maintainer who's been around for a couple of years now called Tony over in America, and he's actually taken the code base to another level. So he's spending a lot of time on the project, updating it and making a lot of improvements. So big thanks to him, and a chap called Kevin over in America as well, who does a lot of support for our users on the community forum. So yeah, just a bit of recognition for them. So yeah, it's currently GPL v3, so that's what we thought it's from. The license is probably going to stay like that. It'd be too difficult to change it to anything else now, having to try and get back in touch with 400 plus contributors to get them to agree. So it's going to stay as GPL v3. It is a full community-driven project, so it does depend on people getting involved rather than just coming to ask for things all the time. So if you use it and you want new functionality and you can write code, then please jump on board and do help out. unlike other projects, we aim to be inclusive to everybody. There's no daft questions. There's no right or wrong answers. We want people to get involved in this, so we are as welcoming as we can be. You might find short responses when you ask for help in some ways. It's just time limitations more than anything, but we do aim to try and be welcoming to everybody. And yeah, the project itself is 5 years old this year. I did mention this last year, and somebody on the IRC channel at the time offered to throw a load of beers in for a party, and I think it's something that we might actually consider doing. It won't be in the UK, it'll be somewhere else. We seem to have quite a lot of users, and when I was talking to people yesterday, I got to a point where I thought it's pointless me doing this talk because there seems to be quite a lot of people in this room who already use it. So you might be switching off and doing work at this moment. Everybody likes a party though, don't they? Okay, so what is it a bit more specifically for those, especially those who don't use it? So it's an auto-discovering NMS, network monitoring system. The auto-discovering is actually for two reasons. One of them I'll go on to talk about in a short while. But the first part of it, by design, it's supposed to be simple to use. The installation process is pretty quick. But actually, when you go and add your first device in, the idea is, unlike Cacti and something else, you don't have to go in and go, I want to see this, I want to see that, etc. You just add a device, and it will go off and run a discovery process against that device and work out what information it can store. And then from 15 minutes onwards, you'll start seeing data. Whether it's graphs or event log information, etc. You'll start seeing a lot of information in the system. So it's designed to be as hands-off as possible, so you don't need to spend your time configuring things. As you scale, that changes a little bit and you need to start fine-tuning things, but by default it should work out of the box. I mentioned Ruby in the other talk. I'm probably sure PHP is not going to get me any new friends either. It was written in PHP when we forked. It's going to be very difficult to switch to something else now without a big rewrite. So it is a full LAMP stack. It's got a lot of legacy code in there, which works just about, but we're actually in the process of trying to move to a framework, so we're switching across to Laravel if anybody is a PHP developer in here, just to give us a bit of a framework around it, allow other people to join and know exactly what the code base looks like rather than having to work it out, because believe me, you'll spend 3 months trying to figure it out first before you make any changes. So yeah, it's a network and inventory system. So the idea is that it's a single pane of glass into your network, visibility on your traffic levels. You can monitor server infrastructure as well, so you can see disk usage, CPU usage, etc. Plus a lot more. You can see BGP sessions, a lot of routing information in there. And the idea is you just go to LibreNMS, you have a look in the web interface, and you should be able to work out what's going on, hopefully. At the moment, all of the data collection is done via SNMP, so that's predominantly what we support. We do have some support for CheckMK and CollectD agents as well, but predominantly it's all SNMP based. And obviously, network monitoring itself is starting to move on, so telemetry is the new buzzword of the day. We will be looking at adding support for telemetry at some stage, but we've still got a lot of work to go to get the actual core product, if you like, up to scratch and working as we want to see it. So that's going to take us a bit of time. Obviously, it is a project. Nobody works on this full time, but we'd love to get telemetry support in there as well. We generate graphs by RRD tool. That's predominantly what we use. Again, it's legacy. It's what's been built into the platform from day one. We did add, a couple of years ago, support for things like InfluxDB, Graphite. We've got OpenTSDB as well. So whilst we only generate graphs from RRD, if you already run some of those platforms, like Influx, you can push all of the metrics that we store straight to your own Influx systems. So obviously people then run Grafana on top of things like that. You can generate dashboards and graphs from the system in your own sort of tooling that you might have. So yeah, graphing by RID tool, I think as a lot of network, like links in the UK talk about, they like to see up and to the right graphs apparently, because it means they're doing really well. So I have got some screenshots. It's not just me talking all the way through this. I'm not too sure how they're going to come out on this. So you just have to trust me in saying that they look awesome in the web interface. They might not look so good here. Let's see. So yeah, the top one there we've got, it's just a stacked traffic graph. So that's all of the ports on an individual device, all stacked together to show you the total traffic usage. And it's a CPU graph below. Again, it's stacked with all the cores within the system. You can't really tune the graphs at the moment how you like them. They are set as they come out of the box. But we are looking to change things like that and provide a bit more flexibility. The one graph you probably don't want to see, this is actually off one of our live MySQL servers where we had login enabled and forgot about it for quite a while until it filled up the storage. and then stopped working, and then we lost graphs for the 5-10 minutes until we got it fixed again. So yeah, you don't kind of want to see that type of graph. Just a bit of GitHub stats. We're not a super big project. You know, we're not talking about thousands of contributors or anything. But for what we are, it's a decent size. So we've had over 480 people contribute to the project since it's forked. You know, some of it might be just single documentation changes and things. Other people have come along and just randomly appeared and, you know, contributed a big part of the code base to us. We've got a pull request in the system at the minute to add full SNMP trap support. So we've got basic one for ports up and down at the minute, but somebody's just appeared from nowhere and gone, here's a load of SNMP trap support. So we've got to do some work to get that into the code base itself, but, you know, people do this on a regular basis, which is quite nice. We've had over 14,000 commits. That obviously continuously goes up. It's unusual not to see constant commits throughout the day from people. 5,000 pull requests, and unfortunately, a stack of issues as well, 2,500 issues we've gone through. We kind of don't use GitHub anymore for general bug reports and things like that. We do all that on the community forum, so that's kind of leveling out a little bit now. So, mentioned the installation a little bit earlier. It's a very, very simple install. We kind of still do recommend people go off and do a manual install rather than anything else, unless you're into the kind of Ansible or Docker containers, etc. But from start to finish, it should take about 15 minutes maybe to go through the install. It's pretty much a copy and paste job. We do provide a couple of virtual images, mainly tagged at VirtualBox and things like that for people to give it a test, give it a whirl. There's people who've contributed Docker images, so if that's your container of choice, then you can just download some Docker containers to get started with that. And then people have also contributed the automation scripts as well, so Ansible, Chef as well, so if they're your tools of choice, then you can just go off and download those scripts and run them to get the installs done for you automatically. So vendor support. So much like Oxidized, we support actually the individual OSs rather than the individual vendors, because vendors tend to run multiple OSs nowadays unless you're Arista. So we've got about detection for about 300 vendors, 300 OSs in LibreNMS now. Unfortunately, it's not that type of system where you can just go off and add a new device that may have not existed yesterday and it just works. You'll get some basic information out of it, but you won't get like the nice shiny logo and specific information from that. But we are trying to simplify that process and make it a little bit more user accessible, if you like. So we're always adding support as much as we can. We get constant requests from people to add the latest device in there. And we've worked to simplify that whole process. So we actually have a script now. You can go on, point it to the device that you've never seen before, and it'll do most of the work for you. It'll generate all the files that's required to get the detection going, and then you can obviously contribute those back. So the way we're doing that, rather than people having to know PHP, you know, it's not always, it's definitely not the language of choice for network engineers. We've moved our detection language across to use YAML just as a configuration file. So the idea is that you can write the detection within a YAML file, and we import that then, and then process the data you see from there. Not everything within the system is based on YAML at the moment. It's still a lot of legacy PHP code, but detection for the actual device. We've had processor support recently added as well. We've got the health sensors. It can all be done within YAML itself. So hopefully we kind of expect it to lower the barrier to entry for people to contribute that back rather than just asking us to continuously do it. So some of the actual features, some of the features hopefully that you'd make use of within the software for running networks and things like that. I actually did update the slides this morning because when I went back through them, I realized I didn't put anything about routing in here, which I'm sure there's one or two people who run some routing protocols. So I mentioned about auto discovery before, so it's not just the fact that we'll go off and discover what that device has available for us to monitor. You've actually got the ability to go and auto discover your network. So in theory, you should just be able to install LibreNMS, go and add a single device to start with, and then using things like CDP, LLDP, etc., it'll go off and spider your network. It might take, you know, an hour, 2 hours, half a day, whatever it is, depending on the size of your network. But the idea is it'll go off, and with the right configuration, it'll find your next device, add that into the system, and then find the next device from that, and continuously go until, in essence, you've got the entire network mapped out in one go without having to do anything else. If you don't even want to physically add a device yourself, we've got an SNMP scanning utility. You can just point it at a subnet, and it'll go off again and just auto-add devices in that it's found. You've got the right configuration details for, and it'll just go off and populate your network that way. So again, the idea is to try and make it as simple as possible for people out the box, so you're not spending your time configuring an NMS when you should be spending time building your network and growing the network, etc. We do have service discovery as well, so anybody who might use it for sort of Linux servers, so we've got basic support for that, but it'll also go off and start doing service checks. If the device it sees is responding to SSH, HTTP, etc., then it'll automatically start scanning for that and monitoring those services as well. So it'll just give you basic up-down port checks, just as a bit of an indication. So one of the things we have changed from when we thought, the original front page of LibreNMS when you logged in was a static thing. You could choose which page you saw, but you had to do it globally. So we've introduced the dashboard kind of widget approach, which allows you to go in and customize your landing page, if you like, per user. So you can create multiple dashboards, you can have different things on those dashboards and share them between users, etc. But it's just got a bit of flexibility, so you can see what you want to see when you log into the system itself. Going forward, we've got big plans for the web interface. We want to kind of drag it away from where it is at the moment and give it a big refresh. And the idea will be we'll move all that widget functionality across the rest of the interface. So as a user, you might go to a particular network device and you might want to see port information, but somebody else might want to see the CPU and memory usage. So you'll be able to customize all the individual pages itself rather than be stuck with what we tell you to look at. Obviously, NMS, that's got to have alerting in. When we thought it had real basic alerting in the product, now we've got quite a complicated alerting system. If you've ever tried to use it, it can be really difficult to get started. We have a collections in there, so you can kind of go, I just care about a device being up or down. You can just click to add it and it's done for you. So we try and make it a little bit simpler. But the idea with it being is anything that we store in the database, you can alert on. And that's where the flexibility comes from, but obviously the complexity as well. So a simple alert rule, just about see that, I think. It's probably not best choice of colors, but that's what's in the web interface now. So that's one. It should basically come back and tell you any device which has got any BGP sessions down. So it's pretty simple to start with. You can go on and be more complicated. This is completely made up one where the device is up, the OS is iOS, serial number matches X and versions and things like that. But you can go in and be that fine-grained about what alerts you kind of want to see. So the interface actually is, at the moment, we've got a pull request outstanding where we're just about to update the interface. It doesn't remove the complexity of it, but it allows you to do more within the web interface than you can at the moment. It's got some limitations in the alert builder. So this is a quick screenshot of what we've come up with at the moment. And like I said, so there's two separate rules there. It's not just one. The idea is that you can support a full SQL query within that, because that's in essence what we're doing in the background. So you can support grouping, and/ors, subqueries, and all sorts of things, all from the interface. You don't have to write the SQL languages yourself. However, we do have an import tool as well. So if you do go off and write your own SQL query for a rule that you want to do, you can just copy and paste it into the system, and it will convert it automatically into that, so you can change it later on graphically. So I'm hoping that will be merged in pretty soon. Off the back of the alerting, obviously you want to get notified about anything that's going on. So we have what we call transports, and the transport is a way to take the information that the alert system has generated and send it to your end users or your NOG team or anything like that. So we've got multiple transports available. Email obviously is the predominant one. That's what most people seem to go off and configure. But we do have ones for IRC, Slack, etc. So you can send your alerts straight into the tool that you use every single day. We've had people contribute really obscure ones as well. So sending it into syslog. So you might get something in from syslog and then we send it back out to syslog or Elasticsearch. We've actually got we've got a pull request in the system at the moment from somebody who's just recently contributed Philips Hue support. So maybe this is for his bedroom, I don't know. But the idea will be with that one is when an alert comes through, all the lights in a particular group will flash on and off to kind of let you know. It reminds me of the old Nagios red light strobe that somebody did ages ago. So yeah, we'll get that merged in quite soon as well once it's been tested. The templates. So this is an ugly part of the system again that we're going to be working on, but you can customize the way the alerts look. So in email predominantly, but some of the other transports that we've got available. We came up with our own templating engine for some strange reason when we did this, rather than using a library that somebody else has done already. So we're going to go back and fix that at some point. For now, that's the default template you would see creating an alert. It produces something like that. So you get the information you need out of it. It's not amazing, but it does the job, and you can change that to fit in with what you want to see. So I got a couple of examples actually off users who sent these to me on Discord a couple of days ago. So you can do HTML-based emails rather than just plain text. So a user here has basically embedded graphs directly from the platform. So when he gets an alert through, it'll also pop up the graphs that are relevant to that particular alert that's coming in here. So this one is sensor alert, I think, as the values have dipped below a certain value. We sent another one there where the CPU spiked up to a certain percentage. So it is flexible, but it's why reinvent the wheel? So we're going to go back and fix that at some stage. Somebody might recognize this in the audience. I got sent this the other day as well. So this is a notification into Slack. And again, I think you can customize the way that looks as well. There's a couple of options to be able to toggle on and off. But yeah, so that's a Slack one there. One thing we were missing for quite a while, and again, this is one of the contributions that somebody just appeared one day and said, I know you need this. I've kind of done it for you now, which is amazing. It's got us started. Needs a little bit of work to be done. And actually, I merged in the undefined fix for that before, so that won't show like that anymore. But the idea with this is obviously you might have a core router in one of your POPs, a load of devices depending on that for connectivity. Beforehand, if the core router went off, LibreNMS would see all those other devices down and would send you alerts. Now you can set dependencies up to say, well, all the switches within this POP depend on this router. And if it's down, we only want to know about the router being down. So that's in there. Needs a lot more work to make it useful, because it means you have to manually go and define this at the moment. And obviously we want it to be zero touch. So ideally we'd like to use things like CDP, etc., to be able to work out with the dependencies properly and populate that information automatically. We're not there yet. So yeah, we're talking about 2018 for the alerting system. So we're actually spending a bit of time at the moment on revamping the alerting system and make it a lot more usable than it is at the moment. So new templating system. So that's one that's going to be on the cards to change to a standardized approach rather than just the custom build thing we did. We're going to be adding things like per rule transports for anybody who uses it. So you can create a rule and allocate transports to that rule rather than sending it across to all of them at one time. Multiple recipients, so email alerts or Slack rooms, etc. You'll be able to define those per rule. And actually, I got this down to say that we're going to improve the UI for the group mappings. Actually, somebody's already gone off and done that. So in the time I came down to DKNOG, somebody's already contributed the code back to make that a lot better than it is at the moment. So big changes ahead. A lot of the time, obviously, you kind of install a new product and you end up with another set of credentials. So that's no different for LibreNMS. We run MySQL in the back end, and you go in and add a user. You maintain another set of credentials. But actually, we do have support for some other systems as well. So these, as far as I'm aware, are all working. So you can use your AD, LDAP, Radius, and things like that to do your authentication directly from LibreNMS into whatever you already have. HTTP supported as well, and single sign-on. So if you've got an SSO system already, then you can integrate that into LibreNMS and kind of drop the multi-credentials across all different things. And we do support just basic two-factor auth as well if you need to secure the portal a little bit more if you've got it open up to the public. Okay, so onto the login side. So we've got syslog support. So this is just a screenshot from the demo that we have, showing what kind of information you get. It's typical syslog information, but we store that in MySQL. We provide a basic interface to it, and you can search, you can filter by devices, etc. But again, what we don't really want to do is reinvent the wheel all the time. So what we added probably a couple of years ago now was basic support at the moment for Greylog 2. So if you run a Greylog 2 install, then you can point your configuration from LibreNMS to it, and we'll search on that instead of the inbuilt one. Log into MySQL just doesn't scale. So if you're going past a handful of devices, hundreds of devices, it's just not going to perform very well. So if you're interested in syslogging, I'd highly recommend going off using Greylog 2 and using the integration. They do it a lot better than we can. On the device config side of things, as I'm sure people noticed before, I'm a big fan of Oxidized. We've used it internally for a couple of years now, which is one reason why I started trying to help maintain it when the original author kind of stepped away, because I didn't want it to see it, pile up with issues and pull requests all over the show. But we've had some good integration for Oxidized for a while now, so I'd highly recommend you linking the two up if you run them. You can basically just means you go to a device in LibreNMS and you can go to the config tab in there, and it will pull, using the Oxidized API, all of your config information out. And if you're using Git as the output in Oxidized, then we do version control from in there as well, and you can do diffs, etc. So you kind of don't have to leave that interface there. So that's just a screenshot of what you'd see within LibreNMS. And I think I mentioned in the other talk, obviously indentation in YAML's a bit of an annoyance and catches a lot of people out. We actually have a YAML validator in LibreNMS for Oxidized config specifically. So if you're having problems with Oxidized, you're just starting out, paste it into LibreNMS and it'll tell you if your config's good or bad and where the line is that's causing problems, just to try and save people asking questions all the time. So we've got an API. It started out and we named it version 0, just because it was kind of like it's we started off with something. You could list your devices and do a few basic things. So we started off with version 0. We've not moved past that version number at the moment, but the API is now quite extensive. And again, it seems to be one of the most popular parts of the code base that people turn up and contribute to. So recently we've had billing support added, so you can go in and list bills, list all the historical information, create bills and edit them, etc. Obviously you can do all the things with regards to devices. All the graphs can be pulled in from there as well, so if you want to display port information on your NOC screens, etc., you can pull it all in through using the API. It works really well. We are going to spend some time and look at this one again and move to a version 1 API at some stage. But for now, it does work really well, and it actually fully powers the My LibreNMS mobile apps, if anybody's not seen those before. I'll cover that in a second. So scaling, PHP scales really well, apparently, or not. So I mentioned before, we run about 5,000 devices where I work, so we've got Oxidized polling all of those, but we also have LibreNMS polling all of those. So the only way we've been able to scale this out at the moment is kind of horizontally. So it's just adding additional pollers to the platform. So you can do the usual things such as drop a separate MySQL server in there, RRD cache server separately. So you're offloading some of the worker processes. However, when it gets to the actual core polling, which is where it's very, very CPU and potentially I/O intensive, the only way for us to do that at the moment is to install a second poller node to scale out horizontally. It does work though. We have seen issues where it doesn't work when it's across the world. I've been in talks with people who are trying to poll information sort of from America over to Japan and places like that, and it has limitations in that. But that's the pollers that we run at work at the moment, and again, it's not an amazing clear picture, but individual pollers there, we're getting nearly 2,000 devices out of a single one. The pollers themselves don't run anything else. They don't run MySQL, web services, anything. They are just pollers. And they are all Cisco ASA devices as well, so the polling time on those is pretty quick. You're talking sub 3 seconds, whereas the poller 3 and 4, that's where we poll some of the heavier devices like Nexus, Kit, Aristas, etc. So the poll time on those is a lot longer. It means we can poll less devices in there overall. But it does give you a bit of resilience as well. So poller 1 and poller 2 for us, that's in essence n+1 for us. If we lose one of those poller nodes, the other one will pick up those remaining devices. And in the time we've got there, it's got to complete within 300 seconds. It's just about going to cope with it. So you can do it to get resilience as well. If you need to do patches and things on pollers, you can introduce a new one while you patch and update another one, etc. Also, useful to support NAT environments. So if you've got corporate networks where you can't get access into the network from remote, you can drop a poller into that network and it can do all outbound connectivity to send all the data back to the central location. So helpful in those scenarios. So traffic billing. So obviously some companies bill their user based on traffic usage, data transferred, megabits per second. So we have support in there to be able to create bills directly within LibreNMS. So you go in and configure these yourselves. There are elements of automation within this, and it's got full API as well available. But you go in, you define a bill for an end customer. You can say how much traffic they can transfer in a given month. You know what billing what billing day actually happens for them. Set the overage usage, and it'll go off and track all that information. And the difference and reason why it's a bit separate is because with RRD tool, over time you lose a lot of the data within that. It consolidates itself down over 24 hours, and then a week, and then a month, etc. So you lose the granular data that you can see in the billing. So these are just some screenshots from that area. So you can see more precise graphs. You can see actually what's gone on with that particular customer at that particular point in time. So you can, again, integrate this into your billing systems using the API. You can actually get the raw data out as well. So if you want to generate graphs somewhere else in some other funky style, then you can get the raw JSON data that we save in the database and expose that wherever you need to. So the slides that I forgot to put on my last talk for this one, routing. I'm just going to show you screenshots of this more than anything, because there's obviously not a great deal to see within the web interface to a certain extent, and the BGP section is in dire need of updates. It looks awful at the minute. It's not been changed much recently. So we graph prefixes, so you can see the change in prefixes over your peers. We also graph updates as well, so you can see how frequently updates are being announced across to different BGP sessions. And because we store all that information as well in the database, you can alert on it as well. So again, if you've got prefix limits that you want to keep an eye on, then you can set values within the alerting system to be able to let you know when prefixes are going above certain values or below. Excuse the masked out boxes on this, but it is taken from a live production system, so I got told that we can't show that. That's OSPF, very basic at the moment, but it gives you a little bit of information again without having to log on to the individual devices. For anybody stuck in a Cisco world, we've got support for OTV, so we give you some basic information about what's going on the OTV instances as well. So number of VLANs enabled over there, the MAC addresses. There is some text information as well, but nobody wants to see that on a slide. There's enough of that going on. Ceph, that is just a table of data. And peering DB support. Okay, so we added this in, I think it was last year now. It's very basic at the minute, but the idea is we want to actually make use of the peering DB data a lot more. So at the moment, what this does is it looks at your local AS numbers that you've got configured on your routers. We download some of the peering DB information overnight, and then we start matching it up. So you can go in and look at one of the peering LANs that you might be connected to, for instance. I think this might be taken from one of the links LANs, and it will map out who you're connected to. So just at quite an easy glance, you can look at who's on that peering exchange, who you've got BGP sessions configured with, and who you haven't. So again, you can maybe use it to start going through, sending out your emails, etc., to say, hey, come and peer with us, etc. We want to make use of that more over time. Not too sure what else we can do with it, but I'm sure there are other bits of data out of peering DB we can make use of within the system. Okay, on the update side, we allow, automatic updates is how we do things by default. So again, trying to keep it to a point where it's zero touch for people. You're not spending your time maintaining an install of this. We process automatic updates by default out of the box. You can turn that off if you've got any reason to, but by default, once you've installed it, then the next day it's going to update, and the next day it's going to update again. And as I mentioned, we are committing so our master branch is basically our development branch. We're constantly committing to that. So if you're running the default install out of the box and you don't change across the stable releases, a big thank you, because you're a bug tester in essence. So if you're brave, then stay on the master branch, and that helps us out no end, because it means that obviously if something does break, we tend to wake up in the morning to a few people telling us about it. We do have unit testing in. We're testing more and more of the code as it's being developed. So hopefully we don't break it too often. But the fact is that the old code base is horrible, and it's just a spaghetti mess that inevitably, as we try and improve it, we end up breaking a few things along the way. So if that is a concern for you, if you don't like seeing gaps in your graphs, if that's a big thing for you, go to the stable releases. It's very, very rare we break anything in the stable releases. We've had it a few times. It's usually just a small bug that might occur, but we'll tend to just do a point release to get that fixed. But yeah, in general, the stable branch, obviously, for people who have a concern about uptime on these devices. So the mobile apps, I actually never thought I'd see a mobile app for LibreNMS, but again, somebody had a need for this and wrote the code. And originally, the company that did it, Wave Direct, they wrote it because they're moving across from Cacti, which has a mobile app, but they wanted obviously to switch across to LibreNMS. So they set one of their engineers to go off and build an Android, well, an iPhone app originally, because that's what they use. Later on, they added support for Android as well, with the promise that one day they would release it as open source to the community and allow people to contribute back to that. And again, try and make it better overall. And I can't remember if it was the back end of last year or this year. I think it was the back end of last year. They came true and actually did that. So it's now released as an open source product. And again, you know, if it doesn't do what you want it to do, change it, fix it. But it's there. So yeah, Android and iPhone. You know, it gives you a good amount of information. It's not got full information in there, but it gives you ports, health information, your event log data, etc. The alert system is all tagged into it as well, so you can see a lot of information in those apps. Okay, so anybody who did maybe see the NL-NOG talk have seen this before. When I found this comic strip, it kind of, well, no, it definitely rings true about open source development and helping people. Hopefully it comes through. So, in some ways, some people who turn up demanding help from us, I think they think this is how it is. And you know, there's a team of people all coordinated and know what's going on with everything. Yeah, it's just not true. And this is the truth behind it. You know, it does mean that you might have a bug and it might not get fixed straight away. You might ask for help and have to ask for help again the next day. Well, such is life, you know. We've all got families, we've all got work commitments, things going on, friends, family, etc. So, give us a break. If you're asking for something to be done and it doesn't get done straight away, or you don't get a response, yeah, you know, consider something else might be happening. But you know, we do spend a lot of time trying to make sure everybody who uses the software gets a good experience. So you certainly won't be told to. Well, swear words from somebody else. But if you do need to get in touch, you know, we are happy for that to happen. We made a switch away from IRC not so long ago. We still have an IRC channel, so that's okay. We have a bridge between the two, so we have a bot that talks the messages backwards and forwards. It's not perfect, but from a developer's point of view, Discord is better for us. It allows users to go in and search for past questions and find answers themselves. You know, pin messages. If we do break something, when we find out, we can pop a message up to say, don't ask about this, we already know, here's what's going on. So it's got a lot of benefits to us. So yeah, you can still log into the IRC, but it's much better if you jump into Discord. We run a forum. We went back to the old school. Anybody been into cars and things like that, you always used to be part of a forum. We started one off again. We used to use Google Groups and just didn't find it worked for us very well, so we've got a community forum. And this actually works really, really well. You know, again, people come and ask questions all the time, get the responses. You can search about previous issues and what people have done to fix it. Reddit, we fell into helping people on Reddit all the time, and a subreddit popped up with LibreNMS on it. You know, and again, people kind of just default to, I hang out on Reddit, so I'm going to ask the question on Reddit. So you kind of then have to go and help people out on Reddit as well. And I'm sure something else will pop up at some stage. GitHub, so we've changed the way we use GitHub quite a bit, just trying to make it a bit easier on the maintainers. It's not to annoy people. If anybody has an issue that we close and told to go somewhere else, it's because it's, you know, it can be a struggle. So GitHub is for known bugs, so bugs that we've confirmed, you know, you've spoke to us about it, and we say, yeah, that's definitely something that needs fixing. Or if you need help getting a new device supported in LibreNMS as well. Anything else, new features, you know, you just need a bit of help and hand-holding, then community site or Discord is definitely where to go. Okay, we obviously love people to get involved, and like I said, we are an open community. You know, we do welcome people. We will help anybody who doesn't know how to code in PHP, code in PHP if you need to, how to go through the process of submitting pull requests and things like that. But we're always looking for people contributing code, you know, creating pull requests, helping us out. It alleviates a lot of the pressure. Documentation's a big one. You know, we're all techies, so that means we suck at documentation. So it means it works perfectly when you write it, you know, it's amazing, and then somebody else comes along and goes, this just isn't making any sense whatsoever. So if you get frustrated over the documentation, change it. It's, you know, it's a simple fix. Helping others is one of the biggest parts, actually. If we have to sit in Discord and other sort of media channels helping people, we can't write code. And we obviously want to make sure people get the help they need, but we also want to make sure the code base continues, gets developed, new features get added, etc., and people want to use the product. So if if you're hanging around in these channels and you hear of a question you've asked yourself before or found the answer out, then help somebody else out. It goes a long way. And if you can't do any of that, if you find bugs, that's perfect as well, because you won't be the only person getting hit by that bug. So if you find bugs, let us know and we'll get something sorted. Just some contact methods on there. So we'll start getting support requests now on Facebook potentially, and you know, Twitter as well. Actually, we have some good conversations on Twitter occasionally. But yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch, there's a lot of contact details up there. That's me done. Any questions?
Hi, I'm Morten from SmartShare Systems. We do bandwidth management appliances. One of the questions we often get from our resellers and MSPs are thresholds. So do you support, for SNMP based, a lot of SNMP information like byte counters are counters and not rates.
Yeah.
So do you support, for instance, bandwidth rate thresholds based on the interface byte counters, for instance?
Yeah, so for the alerting side of things.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. So we've got, again, default alert rules that you can implement to say if this bandwidth goes over 80% used, send a notification out. So we track a lot of data in the database. We don't just rely on the RRD data. That gets stored as well. We calculate the differences between the poll times and calculate rates and diffs off that. And it allows us to do alerts based on that as well. And on the health side, the sensors, wireless sensors and things as well, some vendors send us a high-low threshold limits. If they don't, we also calculate that. But again, it means you can kind of just go in and go, I want to see any alerts where it says the sensor information has gone off above a certain value. So we support all that natively, yeah.
Okay, that's great. So if it's a rate threshold, for instance, can you configure that the rate for 10 minutes or half an hour was above? So is it just a polling interval rate, or?
No, you can. So in the alerting system, I didn't show screenshots of the full alert builder, if you like, but we support what's called a delay and an interval time. So if you want to know it's happening after 15 minutes of usage, then you can set 15-minute interval time, delay, and it won't send an alert for the first 15 minutes. If you want then to repeat that afterwards every 15, you can change the interval time as well. So yeah,
okay, great,
supported.
Thanks.
All right, any more questions? Nope. All right, thanks to Niel.
Thank you.
And a little present from Denmark. All right, so I think it's lunchtime. We have lunch for 1 hour, so we'll see you in here 1:30. And yeah, get some lunch.